we can't shy away from the fact that the shape of procurement teams will and is already changing. With automation, with AI, there'll be frankly less operational roles within procurement. So there will be less need for that. The best leaders will recognize that, will be able to implement the changes required, and there'll be a reshaping that's needed over the next maybe 2, 3 to 5 years. Those who fail to adapt will really struggle.
What are the other challenges that procurement leaders actually face and might face even more?
Inevitably,
Welcome to another episode of Extraordinary Leadership Podcast. My name is Dagmara Asbreuk. I am your host. And today in studio, I have with me a seasoned procurement leader that is absolutely passionate about procurement and call himself procurement protagonist and has a very brave mission to empower and help leaders, procurement leaders, to become 1% better every day. Tom Mills, that I happen to get to know through LinkedIn, where he is extremely present and also with almost 100,000 people following his voice. So become a very instrumental and influential in that realm. And stands for simplicity, clarity, and impact, obviously, in leadership and especially procurement functions. So today we're going to unpack his journey and what he believes is important when it goes about future-proof leadership, and especially for procurement functions. So I believe this will be an interesting for you if you're in procurement or if you're not, because you have a chance to learn about procurement functions too here. So excited to start this conversation with you, Tom.
oh, it's great to be here, and thank you for the introduction. I'm always a bit embarrassed when it comes to things like my LinkedIn followers and things like that, but to be honest, it's all come from a passion that I have for procurement, for leadership, and also for hopefully influencing positive change. So the ability to be able to talk about it on a show like this is just great. So thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you very much. And I can feel for you because I know we had a little chat before actually we started here. And I followed you on LinkedIn. That's how actually I came to think, okay, Tom will be an interesting person to interview here in this podcast show, in this space, because I can feel that passion that you bring to procurement. It does transpire, in everything what you write as well there. So I believe that anybody who listens to us will feel it too. So Tom, procurement protagonist. Where does that all come from? Where does your passion come from? What does that even mean?
Yeah, so actually, people will be surprised to hear that I've had some dark periods in my time looking after procurement whereby I've really struggled in the role. I felt that procurement isn't doing enough to do the right things in businesses. I've seen procurement done very badly. So, when I say I'm procurement protagonist, I'm not saying that everyone who does procurement we should get behind. I believe there's certain ways of working in procurement that I'm really passionate about. So I've seen procurement delivered badly in organizations, and I've also seen it delivered really well. And what I'm a protagonist of is the delivering it really well. And when it's delivered really well, the focus isn't on the technical skills. It isn't on AI or all of the automations or the processes. The focus is on people. It's about partnership. It's about leadership. It's about communication. So my procurement protagonist is actually, or protagonism is very much focused on soft skills, the human element, emotional intelligence. And so my passion from that has been that I didn't feel like there were enough voices talking about that. You can
Mm.
buy qualifications, you can invest in textbooks which tell you all about the theory, but no matter how good you are at understanding the theory around good procurement, your success will be determined by your ability to drive good relationships within the business. So my protagonism is based on
Mm.
the human interaction, and it's that I'm passionate about.
Yes, and I can just not, probably those that followed me here already know that I spent 15 years in procurement myself. So those that haven't yet, then just discover it now. And I could echo what you were saying. I also had episodes into seeing different type of leaders in that space. And so important that you also raised the human element, right? The key ingredient
Yes.
to success in leadership and in procurement, for procurement as well, relationships and emotional intelligence. So that drove me to directly, another curiosity question. How did you come to that? So you mentioned about this challenging times. Maybe that was, where it
Yeah.
started?
Yeah, really good point. So if I can be a bit more specific around the challenging times, because of some of the struggles I felt in terms of transitioning from, I was originally a buyer, so I was in direct purchasing, whereas I then transitioned to a leadership role in indirect procurement. And when it came to the stakeholder challenges and the difficult conversations that you have and kind of the struggles that we have with dealing with compliance issues and all of the things that procurement are responsible for. I actually, combined with some challenging times personally, suffered from some mental health challenges. So I actually suffered from or generalized anxiety disorder. And because I put so much pressure on myself to do a really good job, and what I hadn't appreciated was that the challenges was facing weren't unique to me. There are many people in procurement who are facing the same challenges. So I began to develop solutions for myself, but I began to talk more openly about it. And actually, it was at that stage when I started to be very open with my network that I started to build an audience because people are like, oh, thank goodness, someone's starting to talk about it. Someone's come through that period and is coming forward with solutions. So very specifically, I think there are two instances, maybe around 2013 and around 2019, where I felt like the generalized anxiety disorder was potentially going to derail my career.
Mm.
But I developed for myself some frameworks which I used to help deal with those situations, to help disassociate from those situations. And those frameworks are actually frameworks that I now teach in my own course called Procurement Soft Skills Mastery. And I think we'll come on to that later on in the conversation. But they helped me to develop kind of almost like mindfulness techniques that I could apply in the workplace, but also deliver effective results. And they were all focused on how to deal with those difficult situations, whether it's negotiating or managing a difficult stakeholder or dealing with non-compliance. So I know it's a bit of a long answer, but almost through the challenging times that I faced from a mental health perspective, it also forced me to find the solution and to talk openly about it. And now I'm just really glad if I can help one other person in the world to understand you're not alone, it's not just you, then there's the positivity through things like social media. And that's why I'm pleased now to have a following that I can help.
Yeah, it's resonated deeply with me what you said. And I guess probably with many also listening, because it is those quiet battles inside
Yes.
ourselves that most of us face in many different leadership roles. And of course, it's not something that you want to shout on the roof to every peer, right? Or even to your manager, right? To your superior. And this is what is such an ingredient and an impact maker in how you lead, how you show up, how you perform, and of course beyond that on your mental health and well-being and health impact, right? So it has so many
Yes.
different ways of how it impacts. So I'm happy that you share it so openly. And you mentioned something so, I think, important and resonating with so many leaders, with first of all myself at that stage too. And now, in a seat of a coach, I see those challenges that you described too. And it is this pressure that so many leaders, so many great leaders are putting on themselves, driven by obviously our very, very creative ego mind
Yes.
and our past conditioning, but we'll not go now to details, telling that is never enough. But we need to do
Yes.
more, right? Isn't it? I don't
Yes.
know what where the narrative's playing in your mind that time, but that's one of the key ingredient factor that we're in this loop of always.
Yes.
It's a hyperachiever syndrome, basically. It's called hyperachiever
It's
syndrome, actually. Even.
It is, and actually I do recognize, and I'm a bit of an amateur psychologist, so I've read a lot of books. I particularly warmed to Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence book, which I'd advise any leader to read because it made me understand the connection between my childhood experiences and how I felt as an adult in the business world. And I think that's led to, I was always a high performer, but with imposter syndrome, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So I would always feel like, oh, at one point I'm going to be found out. when you apply that specifically to procurement, and hopefully people who are in the procurement world, this will resonate with, a lot of the time you're dealing with categories, for example, IT, that you're not necessarily as expert as the stakeholders you're dealing with. You're an expert on the procurement processes, you know how to buy, but very often you're dealing with and working with stakeholders who have such deep knowledge of their category that you feel almost, oh, I don't deserve to even be in this conversation. I don't understand what you've said. Or, sometimes people are using acronyms or terminology that you're not used to. So what that does is it feeds into that feeling of imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And then you start thinking you're not good enough. And then you add that to the fact that sometimes you will deal with difficult stakeholders who actually don't want to deal with you. Then it starts creating this internalized pressure. And that's where I decided, well, actually, no, I need to change my mindset here. I need to be clear on what the procurement's role is, and I need to be able to deliver where I know I can add value and find ways that it doesn't impact me. So, yeah, I think again, it's not talked about enough. And I feel like the procurement protagonism that I am focused on is very much on helping teams, helping people to understand that you are good, you've got all the skill sets, you can deliver lots of value to the organization, but there's a mindset shift that's needed.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So much resonating. I didn't expect that at all. And it
Right.
is. This is going from actually noticing your greatness. Yeah, this is thing. And on top of the book you mentioned is really great. I will encourage, and I don't know if you know that one, the one that make
Yeah.
really a difference for me and the whole program that I now also bring to clients is positive intelligence. Is actually really from Shizet Shamin, and it brings really clarity. Categorize for you the 10 different mind saboteurs, and one of them is hyperachiever with its language, like you described, and they are
Yes.
9 others that are living in our mind and are sabotaging
Yes.
us and are at the cause of, costing us a lot of energy and wasting time. But also they are behind the scenes, the root cause of, imposter syndrome, those narratives, right? Of not taking breaks, of the other tendencies as well, procrastination, avoidance, or victimization, whatever, whatever. There are 10 different types of ways how those mind saboteurs are living in our heads since very little time, as you mentioned, since childhood, of course, basically derailing us quite a lot and a huge impact on health. So, very glad that you mentioned that because I think the first point is the awareness, what you mentioned, that's what you are first of all standing for, is the awareness of you not alone.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
brings a shift to people to know, oh, there is someone I can talk to, like,
Yes.
and I don't feel that something wrong with me. That's how I also felt in those times, right? Before discovering all those beautiful things. That brings people not only hope, but reassurance, right? And then it's a journey of how do you actually see your greatness, right? And step into that greatness and from that greatness lead, because that makes a difference, isn't it? That makes a difference.
Yeah.
Maybe you've seen, how would you describe the before and after when you are,
Yeah. Well,
as a for procurement?
yeah. I mean, now I feel like I've got various tools and techniques that I can employ in difficult situations that just enable me to create a degree of separation from the impact of those situations. So that's number one. But I think the biggest shift that I felt is through going through the experiences that I have, it has made me a more empathetic leader. So what I mean by that is I now know that I develop much deeper relationships with my team such that they
Mm.
really want to succeed because they know that I've opened up about my own vulnerabilities and they also feel able to and in a safe place to open up about their own insecurities with me. So I think what that's done is it's changed my leadership style such that now I deliver a real kind of proper team whereby people feel they can be open, we can have good, valuable conversations whilst me supporting them to be effective at their job. And so that's the biggest satisfaction I get or have had in my corporate career has always been the people that I've coached, the people I've developed, the people I've supported, and how I've been able to impact them at a deeper level, not just in the workplace, but perhaps in some of their mindset shifts. And that's the bit that I really get a lot of value from because I know that I'm helping them in a bigger way than just to do their job.
Yeah, I can sense that. Of course, you bring that impact driven leadership. And That's what so many leaders also value. And that's what is needed, right? And I love that you actually connected the dots because it does. Once you
Yes.
are working from inside out, right? On those shifts, on that several layers. On one side is letting go, and another is owning something, right? And of course, self love, self worth, all those different puzzles play a role. But I think you mentioned something important. It's not only about that it makes you stronger and more resilient, probably as well as confident, but it actually helps you to be more empathic because you understand
Yes.
better people. And that fuels the relationship, is which, as we know, in procurement or in any other function, is like a important
Yes.
part in success.
Yeah. And I don't want people to do a good job for me because I feel that they have to or it's part of their performance objectives. I want them to feel they do a good job for me because they respect me and they want and they I was going to say love me, that's perhaps a bit too much, but that they value our relationship and therefore don't want to let me down. But at the same time, that they feel like I'm here to support, I'm not here to judge, and I'm here to help and I'm here to guide. And one thing that I really believe in, because I know, this whole podcast is about leadership, but I believe in the lean methodology whereby rather than tell my team what they need to do, I ask them questions and guide them towards what I think the possible solutions could be, but I always leave them responsible for the
Mm.
actions that they take. So even if sometimes someone might have a different approach to the one that I would take, I don't micromanage, I don't force them down a certain route. I'll just ask the questions that enable them to think it through. And again, that touches a little bit on human psychology as well, but I feel like that's always the way that I've delivered a really positive environment. I create a framework within which people can then take self-responsibility and control.
Absolutely. So I'm hearing, the two magic things in from the leadership lens is, environment, which is psychological safety, right? That you
Yes.
create. And from that safe space where people feel free to be themselves, or let me say safe to be themselves and to give in and to show up and to take and grow, you also
Yes.
empower them in a way they can feel responsible and actually own their success, own their journey by asking powerful questions, which is called coaching, rather than mentoring and
Yes.
telling people what to do, right? Which is called training.
Yes.
So yes,
Yes.
that's like a beautiful match.
Yes, and I get the most satisfaction from seeing the success of my team. So to be really honest, if I've delivered something and say I've delivered a project and a saving, and someone says thank you, I'm also okay. I'm quite that's nice. But when I see a member of my team delivered something, I want to shout about them to the rooftops because I see that as brilliant for them, but also that's a true reflection of my success because if my team is thriving, if my team's getting the recognition, I don't need to be, I can just be in the background. I'm okay with that. And I think too many leaders feel that they need to take credit for things or steal the limelight. And actually, true leadership is shining the light onto your team. And that is the best leaders I've seen are almost just there in the background guiding. They're not at the forefront of all the achievements. And, when the awards are handed out, I want it to be my team. So I know it sounds very idealistic, but it's very easy to achieve. It's just a mindset shift, really.
Yeah. So what do you think hold those leaders back to do so? Because I totally agree with you.
I wonder so one thing I'm very passionate about is ego-free procurement, and that's
Mm.
could be applied to leadership as well. Because as soon as you strip ego from your interactions, you're far more likely to make the right business decisions. You're far less likely to get emotionally involved. And I think when it comes to leadership as well, it can be quite an ego-driven world. And I think there's an element of that also allied to insecurity in roles. So there's quite a lot of job insecurity, even in the last couple of years, you've seen it in, threats of AI and things like that. So people feel like they need to prove their value. Whereas
Mm.
my view is your biggest value as a leader, in fact, it's intrinsic in the word leadership, is you are leading people. And actually, the success of your team is the best reflection of your impact on an organization. So, and I always say the most important piece of procurement I ever do in any role is procuring my people. So making sure that I've got the right people, the right team. And I think that that's something that we don't think about enough in terms of bringing in true diversity, making sure that we've got the environment where diversity can thrive, and making sure that we've got like you said, psychological safety within that environment, people to deliver the best of themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm just digesting our conversation and thinking, where do I take it from there? Because in every of these chapters we can enter, and maybe we should.
Yes.
So you mentioned, there are three things that came, and that's such a common theme. I think one is the internal struggles that I think maybe we want to go into that and what can help, right? And
Yes.
probably it's resonating also with part of your work. The second, I think you really talk about the human relationships, right? That's an important part aspect too. And I think the third one, what with just now you mentioned, is also the importance of having the right people and creating this not an environment, but well, choosing as well as growing. And that's a topic
Yes.
by itself, I see. And of course, you leave from the front, from the back. So maybe we go one by one and unpack them a little
Yes.
bit because they are really golden nuggets, I feel, for whoever listens. So what would you recommend, Tom, from your experience? And which way you believe that helps people to shift from being the victim, let's be
Mm.
honest, being a victim of their mind and of a lot of wired narratives coming from the
Yeah.
past and victim of imposter syndrome, let's call it this way. What do you believe help people the most
Yeah.
to shift from
Oh,
there?
wow. It's a big question,
I know
Dagmara,
we
and
could
I'm
have a whole conversation about it.
yeah, yeah. Um, I deliberately refer to my course that I deliver simply because I've set that out in a way that helps explore this within the foundation stages. So the first 3 lessons I give in my 10-week workshop are very much focused on developing self-awareness. And to develop self-awareness, we obviously there's a number of ways we can do this, but we need to reflect on what are the things that have conditioned us to be this way. You need to be introspective. Another way to develop self-awareness is through the feedback loop. And in the corporate environment, very often we're conditioned to maybe think about getting feedback once a year. Oh, it's end of year review. I better go out to some stakeholders and get some feedback. One of the things I really teach is getting feedback in the moment and actually the power of the micro feedback channel. So even if you're delivering a tender process with a stakeholder, asking them partway through, how's it going for you? Is there anything I can do differently? Even at the end of a meeting, and I know it doesn't sound natural to do this, but once you start practicing, it becomes much easier. Asking, how did that go for you? Did I deliver what you need, kind of thing. And I don't mean that from a subservient point of view. I'm not saying we need to bow to everything that everyone tells us, but only through collecting that feedback can we start establishing the truth about how we're perceived. Because otherwise, all we have in our mind is what we believe. So we're
Mhm.
not, what we're doing is we're actually allowing people to feed back to us and we're using that as our truth kind of gathering exercise to almost compensate for the fact that most people, when they're thinking in their mind, will tend to think about the worst in terms of, oh, I can't believe I said that, or I wish I'd done this. So I believe in the answer to your question is you need to be self aware, you need to develop an element of introspection, but you need to be asking for feedback. There's so much more, Dagmara, because the reason my course and the workshops I deliver are delivered over 10 weeks is because it's a very deep kind of mindset shift, and it probably takes at least 10 weeks to make that transformation. But I think at the core, that's what's important. And I'm interested in your views. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think they are very good starting points. And that's definitely where the journey needs to start, right? Because
Yeah.
if we don't post, right? If we don't reflect of what are the common narratives that show up, right? How do we view ourselves? How do we view others? What might be the beliefs that are running our system, right? We have no chance to change anything, right? That's the observation is the first thing, right? And it's so much help if you are supported in this process from the beginning, because as by example, once you have access to, for example, in my world will be mental fitness from positive intelligence, which is purely designed for that with a backup with a lot of neuroscience, you immediately can faster detect your patterns instead of wasting, months in trying to find them because they are never in conscious mind, but they are always in subconscious mind. How do you find something when you're living in a box? You don't know even that you're living in a box. That's the reality because what is normal for you, You don't know that that's actually just a box. So that's kind of number one. So building on what you just said, this awareness is important, but having someone to help you with is crucial in it, because so many can think, okay, I will just sit down, reflect, write down, my job is done. No, because there's so much that you don't know. And there are so much faster ways of finding this out that actually accelerate your transformation that you need in order to get out of that box and feel more empowered and be more empowered leader and lead from that empowered place, right? And I think the second is so important, what you mentioned too, because that outside perspective is important. And here is the interesting twist I would add, because yes, the feedback is something we this is a gift. This is a gift for
Yes.
us, right? Which means how others view us and perceive us is a gift. And very often we can see, oh, maybe there is a mismatch. And I had that experience many times, right? That I always see myself less than when people saw me, right? Luckily, it was not the other
Yes.
way around.
Yes.
But
Yes.
sometimes it's the other way around, right? Right. But, and here is the fascinating viewpoint that I will never forget. One person once told me when I asked for feedback, like, how am I perceived? And the person told me this: I cannot see what you cannot yourself.
Yes.
And that's a very powerful sentence, because actually we project our beliefs about ourselves, we project on the outside. So, yes, there will be value in the feedback of others, but also we need to understand that you are projecting on the outside what is inside of you, because
Yes.
people feel you, because communication is on subconscious level and not words, right? So even if I say one thing but I feel another, you will feel that too. And that's where we go back to which how people feel with you, right? So that's interesting also perspective, that yes, we need that loop, and we need to be mindful that what you project can be shifted. You just help people to see what you are currently able to. And I think then absolutely for me, it's a mindset shift, but it's also identity shift. So basically for me, the journey of transformation is really on the, because the subconscious rewiring is letting go of the program that we run and is on the autopilot. So we need to first grasp it, understand, and then there are these different methods that we can bring to help leaders to sustainably change, because it's not about conscious shift, which we would like to call it conscious. Of course, we will call it conscious, but it's not happening in a conscious level. It's not happening on a 5% conscious processor, which is our conscious mind, but in a deeper level, which is ingrained in our subconscious mind and body. So we letting go of something that we've been wired for so many years. And yes, that process is
Mm.
not just one time going to a coach or one time doing a reflection. It's deeper than that.
Just one thing I wanted to add, and I talk about this again in my course, is back to the feedback loop. It's the best way and fastest way we can develop as well. So when I said that we're very conditioned by the corporate world to get feedback maybe once a year or maybe twice a year through if you're very consistently asking for feedback, then you're more likely to be able to then adapt, improve more quickly than your peers. So one book that I read last year was the 12-week year. I think it's by I'm looking at it now, Brian Moran and Michael Lennington, but they talk about the ability to achieve what most people can achieve in a year in 12 weeks. And a big part of that is actually through speeding up the channels with which we get things done. And development, getting awareness, getting feedback more quickly than most of our peers is also a way to get ahead. So you could look at it from a competitive point of view in terms of, no, I'm going to be different to my peers because I'm going to make sure that I'm constantly adapting, constantly improving, rather than relying on the normal corporate cycle, which says, oh, it's end of year review time. Can you go and get us some feedback in terms of how you're doing, kind of thing. So it's also a very competitive way of getting ahead.
Yeah, I love it. And it's proactive, right? I think that's for
Yes.
me, you start to do it when you feel I am the owner of my career, my leadership growth, my personal growth, my life. And I think I totally resonate with what you said. And yeah, I've been there maybe partially too until some stage myself, where I was waiting for others to rescue me, right? Or waiting for others to, that should be them that give me, I don't know, the next role, the next
Yes.
promotion. And you're in this waiting loop where that is victimhood. So the faster you shift that it's you who own the journey, and then it's you who shape the journey, the faster you actually are going to go and ask for this feedback, those different people, because you know the value of it, why you do it, right? It's like, oh, I need to change something in perception here because there's not an alignment, for example, can come, right, from this feedback loops.
Yes. And it's you mentioned the word proactive. I am a big proponent of the proactive player. And in fact, one of my LinkedIn posts, it's normally the one I do on my birthday when I give out my tips for a better life. But I always leave with the final tip is you are 100% responsible for your future. And
Mm.
the reason that one's so important is because, yes, we all are conditioned by our past, and we all have challenges which we need to overcome. But as we speak here and now, as we look forward, you as an individual are 100% responsible for your future. And so I'm not saying that some people might not have bad things happen to them or might have misfortune or bad luck, but what you do now will affect your future. So I feel like there's a responsibility piece that we need to take on, and that comes back to leadership as well.
Absolutely. And I like one other point you mentioned, because this is what I called extraordinary leadership, okay? And maybe worth mentioning that for me, absolutely, you the creator of your life and creator of your journey. The faster you
Yes.
understand that, the faster you can write this journey differently. And then you start to focus on what I called embodying that well, I call it embody extraordinary leadership, which means your highest self, your highest level of self, your highest potential, which is basically the journey inwards again. And you basically create not from the past. You mentioned that keywords, creating from the past conditioning. Yes, if we don't stop, if we don't shift, if we don't reevaluate and rewire, we are continuously creating from the past, which means we're living in limitation, right? So what we are better equipped to do is to be like reverse engineers in our lives, right? Is to design that vision, right? And from a conscious place, from an intentional place, aligned with the values, with essence, with what we want and who we are, and embody that. That's why I came up with the word embody that, because it's not only in your mindset and in action, but it's just the whole persona, right? Evolution. So, and when we do that, we start to create our vision reality. That's the only way we actually have to do that. Otherwise, we kind of creating from the past. And yes, we have progress, but it's not the same. Otherwise, we're not realizing our vision if we don't embody that future self.
I love the reverse engineering concept, and it's one that many people can understand in business. But if I look at that, and perhaps I'm going quite deep now, but you know how I'm a big believer in family cycles. So what I mean by that is being the ability to be able to break the cycle of your past. So you know how you get this situation where maybe someone suffered bad parenting from their own parents, and therefore what often happens if you don't evaluate or rewire or you don't look back on that is you end up repeating the cycle of your past. So you end up perhaps in a kind of warped way creating the same problems for your children and then the children's children. And what I'm a great believer in is if you are truly introspective and you truly look at and understand the reasons for what happened to you in the past, you can break that cycle, you can reverse engineer. And I know someone very close to me who has been absolutely outstanding at that. You know, from a point of view of I admire her so much because she's been able to recognize that family cycle, break it, and not repeat it. And so, as such, you know, from a point of view of the societal impact, she won't be passing that down. You know, she's breaking the cycle. And I know that's quite deep from a point of view of a corporate view on the leadership world, but I believe that it all comes back to we need more people to critically think, to be introspective, to be self aware, and then to be able to make that positive change.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting that indeed it is not a regular leadership conversation, but it's absolutely necessary topics. And well, they are part of my daily life now. There are two names, and maybe you know them. Dr. Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about that. So if you haven't yet, check him out. He is
Yeah,
talking about that exactly same thing, and in his own way. And of course, I have a lot of work that resonate with also what Dr. Joe Dispenza is talking about, because at the end, those two not coming across as leadership gurus, they are coming across, I mean, they are there to elevate consciousness and help humanity to move forward, right? And the work I do is very linked with that, because we're talking about human evolution. So we cannot not touch our rewiring as we talk about, right? So there is a lot of, I think, thanks to the internet and thanks to, our global resources, I think the ones we know where to look will find those information to broaden our awareness and to, I think, get to the stage maybe of not convincing ourselves, but realizing that this depth in belongs to our leadership journey.
Yes.
Because this is kind of, I think I have a feeling, Tom, as we are speaking, what emerges for me is like, in a different way we support leaders, but we have some similar view and lens on
Very true.
what belongs to the leadership journey evolution, which is way beyond what is currently being practiced in all leadership development programs that corporations brings. And I've been through them and you've been through them for sure. And I
Yes.
have not experienced the depth that, I went on in my world that was coaching and a lot of other transformational things that from there I have created my own way of serving leaders. And I think you did the same with your way, right? But that's exactly what is, in my view, missing in most of leadership development programs.
Yes. And perhaps they don't feel that they are able to go as deep as the discussion that we've just had. But I think unless you break that down and you do go that deep, you're not really going to truly change the way people lead or the way people are. You might be able to give them frameworks around, communication and teamworking and things like that. But actually, true transformation requires that level of deep understanding of how you're conditioned, how you interact with others, how you get the best out of others. And one thing that I'm um, I'm really passionate about leadership on a general level. I read a lot of leadership books. I read quite a lot of autobiographies of sports autobiographies, for example. So even some of the best football managers, I study people like Alex Ferguson in football. I've read the book Legacy on the New Zealand team, and I believe that there's so many mentors out there that we can get free access to, really, through just
Mm.
reading. And I think there's just so many good examples. And then let's face it, there are some bad examples in the world, and we've got to be very choiceful about, who we believe and what we believe is right, and make sure that your leadership style is value driven. I believe in the importance of integrity. So what I mean by that is you are only happy when you are delivering or acting in the way that is true to your values. And I think there's a lot of people in the world at the moment who are almost playing a bit of a copycat game of, oh, well, X leader's behaving this way, so therefore, you know, that's the way to lead kind of thing. But if it's not in alignment with your values, you're just perpetuating bad things out there, and actually you'll end up coming unstuck. So bringing back to my leadership style, I will always go back to actually my leadership style will always be open. It will always be vulnerable. It will always be transparent. It will always be supportive because that is the way that I know I both thrive and get the best out of my people.
Yes, and I'm sure also that's what is part of the journey that you are supporting the leaders with, right? And totally,
Yes.
totally resonating. So then, when we look into the box relationships, and probably we can find a link from the first one to the other, because now we
Yes.
kind of unpack, okay, how to move out of our traps, which one of them can be imposter syndrome, very well known, but can be others, right? And that the journey inwards, right? That the journey to I call it ascension to our next
Yes.
level. And
Yes.
we agree that there is a need for that level of journey as well for leaders to really rise to their potential and to their impact, right? Now, how do we merge it? How do we unpack the relationships? The importance you mentioned from the beginning, it's so important building relationships and leading people, right? It's all about relationships.
Yes. So I mentioned, and again, I'm going to caveat this with it's a big question. It can't be covered quickly in a 5-minute answer, but I'll do my best to kind of summarize. I mentioned the importance of stripping ego from business, from procurement, but I think it's really important whenever I am thinking about a specific situation in the workplace and whenever I'm spending time with someone, no matter what their role, what their hierarchy is, what their status is in the business, I'm always trying to look at things from their perspective. So I think that true business partnership and true empathy is you try to separate your own feelings, your own ego from the situation, and you try to look at things from their perspective. So, of course, a key way to do that is to remain relatively silent during conversations, to listen, to truly listen, um, to understand what's going on, and to ask the questions that then enable you to help them and support them. And why that's relatively important for procurement is because in the procurement world, we can quite often become very focused on our own metrics. Oh, we've got to deliver X savings, or we've got KPIs around SLAs and things like that. And we're so focused on what we need to deliver that we forget to the stakeholders those metrics might not be as important. For them, it might be, well, we've got a sales target to hit, or, I need to deliver this campaign next week kind of thing. So it's always putting yourself in the shoes of the stakeholder, asking questions, and then developing in partnership a way that you can help support them to deliver what they need whilst aligning or allying with procurement in terms of the way that you can add value. So for me, it's about a mindset shift. It's not focusing on you. It's not focusing on what you need to do. It's judging people with the best intent as well, because I do believe that very few people come to the business to deliberately try to break policy or deliberately try to be corrupt or whatever. Most people just have their own objectives, and it's making sure that you deliver support without judgment. And so for me, it's a big mindset shift, really.
Yeah. And I hear that mindset shift is, for me, is in my own words, it will be like from expert to partner. Because I think
Yes.
yeah. And it is equally important as a leader from, I'm an expert or I'm a partner. And that's why I ask questions, right? So this is kind of a similar shift, right? Because when we see each other as partner, then we start to talk about we.
Yes.
And that's where the partnerships actually starts, isn't it? And then of course empathy, curiosity, how we can actually, what's important for you, what's important for me, this kind of level of conversations we're having.
And you mentioned the I and the we. Don't underestimate the power of language as well. Like really small step changes in terms of here's what we need to do, or here's how I can help you. Literal very small changes in language, how we communicate can make a huge difference in terms of our relationships and how we build trust and how we build that kind of feeling of team. So I'm really glad that you just picked up on that I versus we. And I think that too many in procurement, when I've seen it done badly, are just focus on themselves or what the procurement metrics are. And that's why I'm a big believer in the procurement world of driving through and aligning your value metrics with the stakeholders. So what matters to the business should be what matters to procurement, really.
Hmm. Well, that's how you, as a procurement function, actually come across as a really business partner.
Yes.
Because procurement has its
Yeah.
own evolution and history, right? As a function
Yeah.
itself, always so fascinating, the transformation of its function as well. So
Yes.
yeah, and so it needs to build trust in the last years quite a lot, and still probably is in many organizations. And but that's a beautiful example and explanation of how do you actually become truly the business partner, because you have to think bigger, and then of course that's the way you create a value as a
Yes.
function, as leadership. Cool. Now, I know we can go deeper into that, but we have one more box
Yeah.
to unpack. That was the last one you mentioned, that was about having importance of having the right people, right? In your team matters. Maybe you would like to elaborate more on that.
Yeah, and this one will I need to explain because what I don't want to come across is some ruthless leader who just kind of gets rid of people who aren't delivering, and I don't mean it from that point of view, but when I come into a team, I do believe that sometimes there'll be inevitably people who just don't have that level of introspection, don't have that level of self-awareness, don't have the mindset where they even want to change, and therefore, they can drag down the team just by their attitude, not by their performance, not by their technical skills, just by their attitude. So
Mm.
I do believe that sometimes we've got to recognize as leaders when actually you're banging your head against a brick wall and your time is better invested in the people who are really going to come on that journey with you. So that's the first stage. And by the way, I'm not saying that that means that we should just come in and get rid of people. We should give people a chance. But my point is, what I look for in my people is that level of reflection, that level of introspection, that level of wanting to improve, and that level of understanding that there are different ways of working. And then once you've got that mindset throughout your team, then it's actually a really fun environment you're creating because you're creating an innovative discussion around, what can we do? What do we want to be? And you've got people who are and this isn't age specific, it's not gender specific, it can be anyone. You've got people who are willing to learn, willing to improve. And once you've got that mindset right, then you can really, really shape the team in a way that's going to make a dramatic impact in the organization. And I believe, therefore, that developing the right team environment is far more important than any other sort of technical skills that we need to learn. I do believe that the technical skills in procurement are relatively simple. Things like category management, supplier relationship management, even negotiation skills, they can be taught. But what you need is that environment of a mindset whereby you want to improve, you want to deliver a good partnership, and you want to deliver the best impact for the business.
Absolutely. And that's where those soft skill you call them come into. And I have a question for you, Tom, because this one is out of curiosity, probably from many listeners and also mine. Because we do have this situation, I totally agree with you that we need to evaluate other people right in a team. And definitely hiring by the mindset and attitude is so much more in potential, so much more important than just a skill, right?
Yes.
And we all in our careers met exactly those individuals where performance was high, but the attitude was damaging.
Yes.
So I'm curious to hear what do you think is the role of a leader in this situation and how much leader has an impact on
And are you
changing?
meaning with the more difficult
Yes,
dis
for example, you
yeah,
have in your team someone that either maybe doesn't show the display the attitude which is really valued as a culture, or maybe is even resistance to the change that you want to bring, or
yeah.
any direction
I
you want to
I
go.
so I believe in, and I think I mentioned it earlier on about honesty and openness. So I believe in a leader's role is to be prepared to have those very honest conversations and to do so without fear or prejudice. So sometimes you'll find a situation where an individual just quite frankly hasn't been given that feedback or hasn't been given that opportunity to
Mm,
understand the way their behaviors are affecting the team. So true leadership is brave. It's brave in a way that you are
mm.
not shying away from the difficult conversations. Um, but the second part of leadership is the ability to be able to um, make decisions at the right time. So where I believe you've had those open conversations, you've given a fair opportunity for that individual to perhaps look to adapt or to ask questions in terms of support. If you still feel like there's been no evidence of change or they're still impacting the wider team environment, then I think that it's a role of a strong leader to be quite decisive in terms of making a decision as to when the power of the collective in terms of the team is more important than retaining the individual. And that's the bit that I don't want to be misconstrued. And I'm not saying you should just sack people from left, right, and center, but we've given fair opportunity. You've offered good constructive feedback, but they are still continuing to impinge on the performance of the team. Then your responsibility is for the whole. And therefore you have to be prepared to be decisive.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to, I think, evaluate how much you can shift the situation, not shift, but help
Yeah.
the individual. Because far often, the reason I ask this question, because far often I think, and you probably picked up on it, we kind of think, okay, this person is just, not shouldn't belong unless the person is bringing so much, great results. Then we struggle to, have
Yeah.
this honest conversation and take the right step. But there is a second part of the coin where I've experienced through working with leaders where, they want even to consider to get rid of that person of the team. But then because they work on themselves, on those things we mentioned before in the first place, all right, they open their eyes about themselves. They are becoming more empathic. That shifts completely the way they communicate and see the person and are able to help them. And the magic happens that the other person starts to shift too. And from, wanting scenario of I think the person didn't belong to the team to, positive feedback from that person to that leader is of course an amazing transformation. So I think it's also the choices, right? Of how much are you able to
Yes.
invest and grow and support that person as well, because it's never one sided.
Yes.
Yeah. And take
Yeah.
those brave conversations where it starts. Absolutely.
Yeah, and not just you, but what other support might be there in the organization to help
Yeah.
that individual. But you have to do so. You have to take a little bit of a approach to the time impact of that, because also you want to make sure that you've got the time to invest in those people who already are wanting to develop. So it's a balance, really.
Tom, having explored that, where do you see, first of all, the direction for leaders in procurement? Where is that, where do you see the leaders need to develop more? What's the future type of
Yeah,
them?
so I'm a big believer in the importance of human intelligence. In fact, the introduction of artificial intelligence into businesses, into procurement processes, will enhance the need for really good decision making, really clear communicators, for really good leaders. And so I believe the future of the best leaders in procurement they will be true business partners in an organization. They will be brilliant communicators and really effective decision makers. So, what artificial intelligence will do, and I know this isn't a podcast about artificial intelligence, but what
But
artificial
it's an important
intelligence
part
will,
of the future,
it's
right?
an important part, yeah, that will democratize people's ability to get data analysis. And when I say democratize, it will democratize that information across businesses, it will democratize it within businesses. So, whereas procurement used to be the kind of guardians and the gatekeepers of supplier spend data, contract information, things like that, that will become much more accessible to the rest of the organization. So the truth is that the procurement leaders that will survive and will thrive are those who are able to then turn their impact to really good, clear decision making, brilliant communication, ability to bring business stakeholders together in a room, that type of thing. So it's the emotional intelligence will become even more important. And then the other thing that I think it's worth recognizing is we can't shy away from the fact that the shape of procurement teams will and is already changing. So with automation, with AI, there'll be frankly less operational roles within procurement. So there will be less need for that. There will therefore be the best leaders will recognize that, will be able to implement the changes required, and there'll be a reshaping that's needed over the next maybe 2, 3 to 5 years. By 2030, I think the procurement function will look very different to what it does in 2025. So there's a lot of change afoot, and I think that it's exciting times for procurement, but I do think those who fail to adapt will really struggle.
Yes. And what do you think, apart from those challenges we unpacked, what are the other challenges that procurement leaders actually face and might face even more, hence that direction and future?
Inevitably, economic pressures generally at the moment across a lot of the globe. And with that comes pressure to perform and deliver results quickly. And so I think the continued pressure for procurement leaders will be, how do we balance the tactical with the strategic? So if I look at that on a global level, for example, I know that many companies have kind of rode back from their ESG sustainability agenda because, frankly, that's become en vogue in certain areas of the world. And actually, true procurement leadership will be standing firm to our values and standing firm to what's important. So I think a big challenge will be really tough economic environment, some macroeconomic situations which are also leading to political unrest, which lead to supply chain issues. We'll be so focused on the tactical in terms of keeping the lights on, but how do we keep that broader goal in terms of what the true value of procurement can be? So, really deep topic, but I think it comes back to my point on integrity. How do you lead values based procurement in a world whereby everything's about the here and now and there's such pressure? I think we can either look at it as a daunting prospect or an exciting challenge, and I prefer to look at it as an exciting challenge.
Yeah. And this is also where, what we talked initially is important, which is mindset, which is alignment, inner alignment, which is strengthening that from inside out. It's even becoming more important. That's how I see it in any industry and for any leader, actually, because those trigger factors, let's call it this way, are not diminishing but growing, and also speed of change, right? All of that,
Yeah.
and uncertainty growing. So, Tom, you mentioned about this 10-week program, and I know that you started to explore it. So maybe you want to walk us briefly through what else, when people come to join your program, what else they can experience and, how
Procure
you help them.
Yeah, Procurement Soft Skills Mastery is very much a course that's focused around delivering all the core skill sets that a procurement individual needs to thrive in their career. Interestingly, I've helped people at various levels. I've had director levels, I've had junior buyers really get a lot out of it. And we cover my three signature frameworks. We do a deep dive on things like communication, but we also cover things like networking and how to network effectively. We look at things like how to get promoted and earn more. Now, that might sound like a really selfish desire, but we talk about the intrinsic differences between those who get promoted and those who don't. So there's a lot of elements that we cover which actually aren't purely about procurement, they're more general leadership concepts. And the testimonials that I've had come in have been absolutely brilliant, and people just saying it's literally changed their career trajectory. But also, I'll be honest, there's an element of a bit of a therapy session to it in terms of it's that feeling of community, and back to the point that I made around people not feeling alone. So, I'd like to think it's like a warm cup of tea for people, but one that supercharges their career at the end of it.
I like how you phrase it. Yes, but it is. Yes, I can see that as well in any program that comes into the group. Even some people are like skeptical at the beginning sometimes because, those topics are not like everyday conversations. But once they go through, adds an immense value. And I think the one of them you mentioned is just I'm not alone in it. And there's so much learnings as well along, and it just lifts you up faster, transforms you faster. So beautiful. So Tom, I feel that we could go on, in our conversation because obviously there are so many topics that we could just carve for one episode. But now our time comes to the end, and I just wanted to ask you, like, what is the final message that you would like to leave today the listeners with?
Oh, that's a big one. I'm going to go back to my point in you are 100% responsible for your future. And I'd
Mhm.
like to leave that on that note. So I get that there's a certain element of privilege that we face, a number of us face in the world. Some people are in really difficult situations, but I think it's that reflection on the fact that you are 100% responsible for your future. And actually, as leaders, we have a big ability to not just shape our own future, but to shape the future of others too.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that final words that you said and resonate with it very much. Thank you very much, Tom, for sharing yourself, right? For being also vulnerable. I think I'm also very organic in this conversation so that you open me the space to so many beautiful questions. So thank you for that. And I'm sure listeners will actually very value that as well. And yeah, for whoever is listening to us, thank you very much for staying until the end. I'm sure that you have taken a lot of wisdom from this conversation. There will be a link, obviously, in the description to connect with Tom. He is definitely not a person that you cannot see on the LinkedIn, so it's easy to find him. And then, of course, if you're interested as well, to find out more about his soft skills for procurement. So, thank you very much, and good luck with your mission, which is so much needed in this space. So, thank you very much, Tom, for being here.
Thank you. It's been an amazing time. Thank you.
Thank you.